Have you ever looked back at a relationship and honestly wondered what went wrong? Not because you cheated, not because you lied, not because you stopped caring, but because somehow, even after giving your attention, your patience, your effort, things still fell apart. You listened to the advice. Be respectful, be available, communicate more, be yourself. And yet the men who seem to create the strongest emotional pull are often the ones who move completely differently. That contradiction confuses a lot of men. Because what most people teach you about attraction sounds good in theory, but in real life, it leaves men disconnected, frustrated, and constantly trying to decode behavior that never fully makes sense. And that's because attraction is rarely as logical as people pretend it is. A woman can tell herself she wants one type of man, then become emotionally consumed by someone completely different. Not because she's trying to be difficult, but because emotion drives far more of human behavior than most people are willing to admit. That's what this video is really about. Not manipulation, not mind games, not pretending to be someone you're not. It's about understanding the emotional patterns most men never notice until it's too late. Because once you understand what truly influences attraction, you stop chasing blindly. You stop taking rejection so personally, and you start seeing relationship dynamics with a level of clarity most men never reach. So if you're ready to hear the uncomfortable truths most people avoid talking about, stay with me until the end of this video. What I'm about to break down will challenge a lot of what you've been taught. The modern dating world has created an illusion of endless choice. Social media, dating apps, constant validation, all of it has changed the way people interact. Attention is cheap now. Everyone is trying to impress. Everyone is performing. Everyone is trying to stand out by being louder, faster, more available. And ironically, that's exactly why so many men become forgettable. Because consistency, emotional control, and genuine confidence have become rare. Most men react emotionally, most men over-pursue, most men panic the second they feel distance, and women notice that immediately. Which brings us to the first trait most men completely underestimate: the man who remains steady. In a world full of emotional inconsistency, steadiness feels powerful. Think about it. A woman today is used to men making promises they don't keep. She's used to attention that disappears overnight. Used to conversations that start intensely and fade just as quickly. So over time, she becomes cautious, even guarded. That's why the man who remains grounded instantly separates himself from the crowd. Not because he's perfect, because he's dependable. He says what he means. He follows through. He doesn't constantly shift his energy depending on his mood, and that kind of stability creates emotional safety. A lot of men misunderstand this. They think attraction is built only through excitement, mystery, or intensity. But emotional steadiness has its own kind of magnetism because it's so uncommon now. When you consistently do what you say you're going to do, people trust you differently. If you tell her you'll call, you call. If you say you're going somewhere, you go. If you make a decision, you stand on it. Not for approval, not for praise. Because discipline has become part of your identity, and women feel that, especially after dealing with men who operate entirely on impulse. But steadiness alone is not enough, because the second trait changes everything. Confidence. Real confidence. Not performance, not arrogance, not the loud guy trying to dominate every room he walks into. True confidence is quieter than that. It's the energy of a man who no longer needs constant reassurance from the outside world. A man who knows who he is without needing applause for it. And that kind of confidence affects people deeply because insecurity has become the norm. Most men build their identity on unstable things: money, status, attention, validation from women. So the second those things disappear, they collapse emotionally. But a man with genuine self-belief moves differently. Rejection doesn't destroy him. Silence doesn't unravel him. A woman pulling away doesn't send him into panic mode because his sense of worth was never fully tied to her approval in the first place. And women can feel that almost immediately, not through words, through presence. Through the way he speaks slowly instead of rushing, the way he doesn't over-explain himself, the way he stays composed even when tension enters the room. That emotional stability becomes addictive in a world full of chaos. And the deeper truth most men never realize is this: women are often drawn less to what a man says, and more to how he makes them feel when he says it. Which is why the next weakness almost always catches men off guard. And that kind of inner certainty changes the way you move through every interaction. You stop trying to impress. You stop shaping your personality around what you think she wants to hear. Instead, you become grounded in something far more powerful: direction. Because the truth is, women notice when a man is building towards something meaningful. In a world full of distractions, excuses, and endless comfort, the man who wakes up with purpose instantly separates himself from the crowd. Not because he talks the loudest, but because his life has momentum. That's what ambition really is. It's not just money, it's not status, it's not posting motivational quotes while doing the same thing every day. Real ambition is visible in your habits, your discipline, the way you carry yourself when nobody is watching. It's the quiet refusal to stay stagnant, and women feel that energy immediately. A man with purpose creates emotional gravity. He makes her feel like she's stepping into a life that's moving somewhere instead of standing still. And most men never understand this. They think attraction is built through constant reassurance, endless texting, or trying to become emotionally safe at all times. But safety without direction becomes predictable, and predictability slowly kills tension. That's why ambition matters so much. Not because she needs you to be perfect, but because she wants to feel that you're evolving, expanding, becoming. The man who keeps growing creates curiosity naturally because there's always another layer to him, another goal, another standard, another challenge he's chasing. But here's where a lot of men sabotage themselves. They speak about dreams they never commit to. They talk about discipline while living in cycles of procrastination. And eventually, their words lose weight. Women pay attention to consistency more than promises. They watch patterns. They notice whether your actions match the identity you claim to have. So if you want to become more attractive, stop announcing what you plan to do and start building evidence through repetition. Wake up earlier. Learn the skill. Train your body. Improve your finances. Become the kind of man whose confidence comes from proof, not performance. And once you begin moving like that, another shift starts happening almost automatically. You become less emotionally available to chaos. That's the energy people often describe as the bad boy effect, but most men misunderstand it completely. Women are not attracted to dysfunction. They're attracted to emotional composure, to unpredictability mixed with self-control. To a man who cannot be emotionally manipulated every 5 minutes. The reason the so-called bad boy creates obsession is because he appears emotionally free. He isn't clinging. He isn't seeking constant reassurance. He has his own rhythm, his own focus, his own world outside of her attention. And that independence creates tension. Now that doesn't mean becoming cold or disrespectful. It means keeping a part of yourself protected, not revealing everything immediately, not making her the center of your emotional universe the moment she shows interest, letting conversations breathe, letting mystery exist, allowing her imagination to participate instead of constantly explaining yourself into predictability. Because attraction grows in space. The moment someone feels they've completely figured you out, the emotional intensity begins to flatten. But when there's depth, when there's restraint, when there's calm confidence instead of emotional overexposure, curiosity stays alive. And women respond strongly to that, especially today when attention has become so cheap. Think about it. Most women are flooded with validation constantly. Messages, compliments, reactions, men trying to entertain them every hour of the day. And because that attention is unlimited, most of it becomes invisible. It blends together. It loses emotional impact. That's why the man who controls his attention stands out. Not the man who ignores her to play games, but the man whose attention clearly has value because it isn't handed out impulsively. When you stop over-pursuing, something interesting happens. She becomes more aware of your presence. Your responses carry more emotional weight because they're no longer predictable. Scarcity changes perception. The less desperate you are for attention, the more meaningful your attention becomes. And suddenly she starts leaning in a little more, wondering a little more, thinking about you after the conversation ends instead of during it. Then another psychological trigger quietly enters the picture. Pre-selection. And this is something most men underestimate completely. When a woman sees that other people genuinely enjoy being around you, respect you, value your energy, it changes the way she interprets your worth. Not because women blindly copy each other, but because social proof creates emotional curiosity. She starts asking herself questions she didn't ask before. Why do people gravitate toward him? What do they see in him that makes his presence feel different? And the answer usually has very little to do with looks alone, which is where things start becoming even more interesting. And once a woman starts seeing you through that lens, attraction stops being only about appearance or chemistry. It becomes psychological, emotional, almost instinctive. She begins associating you with strength, direction, and stability without even realizing it consciously. And that leads directly into something modern culture keeps trying to water down: masculinity. Not the loud, performative version, not aggression, not arrogance. Real masculinity is quieter than that. It's the man who stays grounded when life gets chaotic. The man who can handle pressure without collapsing emotionally every time something goes wrong. the man who doesn't need to dominate a room to control his presence inside it. Women are deeply affected by that energy, because at the core of attraction, there's a desire for emotional safety. And safety doesn't come from a man who panics under pressure, changes his personality for approval, or loses control over small inconveniences. It comes from emotional steadiness, from calm certainty. That's why masculine energy is less about what you say and more about how you respond. When things get difficult, do you become reactive or composed? When you're challenged, do you fold or stay centered? When emotions rise, do you lose yourself trying to prove a point or remain clear-minded? Those moments reveal everything. And ironically, the men who constantly chase validation often push women away without understanding why. They become emotionally dependent on every text, every reaction, every small shift in mood. But a man who is connected to his purpose doesn't need constant reassurance to feel grounded. His identity already exists outside the relationship. That's what makes him magnetic. Not because he's perfect, but because he feels emotionally solid. And from there, another trait naturally emerges: leadership. Now, leadership doesn't mean controlling someone. It means creating direction. Women are naturally drawn to men who can make decisions calmly and move life forward with intention. A leader doesn't sit frozen, waiting for everyone else to approve every step. He acts with clarity. You can feel this even in small moments. The way a man plans a date instead of endlessly asking, "What do you want to do?" The way he guides a conversation without forcing it. The way he remains calm when unexpected things happen, instead of spiraling emotionally. Leadership creates emotional relief because it allows the feminine energy to relax. And most men miss this completely. They think attraction comes from constantly trying to please. But attraction often grows when a woman feels she can trust your direction without needing to manage you emotionally. And the key word there is trust, because charismatic leadership isn't about force, it's about presence. A certain calm authority that makes people naturally lean toward you instead of away from you. You don't need to speak the loudest, you just need to move with certainty. Then comes one of the most misunderstood qualities of all: emotional intelligence. A lot of men hear that phrase and immediately think it means becoming overly sensitive or emotionally expressive all the time. But real emotional intelligence is much deeper than that. It's the ability to understand emotions without becoming controlled by them, especially hers. Most men fail here because the moment a woman becomes emotional, they panic, they try to fix everything immediately, or they become defensive, or they shut down completely. But emotional intelligence means recognizing that sometimes she doesn't need solutions first. Sometimes she needs to feel understood before anything else. That changes everything. When a woman feels emotionally safe around you, she begins revealing parts of herself she hides from most people. Her fears, her insecurities, her softer side. And very few men know how to hold space for that without becoming overwhelmed themselves. But the emotionally intelligent man listens before reacting. He reads energy. He notices what isn't being said. He understands timing, and because he controls his own emotional state, he becomes someone she associates with peace instead of emotional chaos. That kind of connection is rare now. And finally, all of this becomes amplified when a man has passion, not fake ambition for attention, not performative hustle, real passion, the kind that pulls you out of bed early because your life actually means something to you, the kind that keeps you focused even when nobody is watching. Women are incredibly drawn to men who are deeply invested in something beyond validation, because passion creates energy. It gives your life texture, direction, movement, and when a man becomes consumed by purpose, something strange happens. He stops chasing attraction so aggressively and starts generating it naturally. His attention becomes more valuable because it's no longer his entire identity. He has goals, missions, standards, a world she can step into rather than become responsible for creating. That's why the men who struggle most with women are often the men who make women their entire focus. They abandon themselves in the process, but the man who stays connected to his purpose never loses his center completely, even in love, even in desire, even in uncertainty. And that's the deeper truth behind everything we talked about today. Attraction isn't built by memorizing tricks or manipulating emotions. It grows from becoming a man who is emotionally grounded, purposeful, disciplined, and genuinely connected to his own direction in life. A man whose presence feels rare because it is. Most people spend years chasing attention without realizing the real power comes from becoming someone whose energy naturally commands it. And once you understand that, the entire dynamic changes, not just with women, with yourself. Because the moment you stop needing validation to feel valuable, you begin moving through the world differently, calmer, sharper, harder to shake. And strangely enough, that's usually the moment people start noticing you the most. If this opened your perspective in a new way, subscribe to Modern Stoic Mind for more deep psychological insights on relationships, masculine growth, and emotional discipline. And before you leave, ask yourself one question. Are you building a life that attracts people naturally, or chasing attention because you forgot your own value?